Real Red Meat Radio on the Lars Larson Show.
Welcome back to First Amendment Friday on the Lars Larson Show. Glad to be with you and always glad to take your calls. We'll get back to those calls in just a moment. Shawn Tuma joins me now, attorney and cybersecurity expert. Shawn, it's good to have you on the program. And with all these reports we've heard from WikiLeaks and everywhere else, that the CIA has many ways to break into our electronic and mobile devices. So how's an American to protect himself?
Well, that's a good question. If you're worried about the CIA, then the odds are pretty good they're going to have a way to get you. For all of the rest of us, which are the vast majority of the population, we really need to start with having good cybersecurity basics. And that starts with education and understanding that very few of the real-life attacks that you and I are going to experience and that our businesses and our family and friends are going to experience, they're not through this sophisticated James Bond kind of hacking. They're through things like phishing emails, clicking on links on websites, on links in messages, downloading attachments, things like that are what lead to the vast majority of the problems we have.
You know, I feel for people like that. I was on the way home last night. I was talking to a friend of mine who was down in Los Angeles taking care of his mother, who's in her 90s. And as we were talking, her phone rang, and he picked it up. And I said, "Was that a solicitation call?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, you almost have to stop talking to those things because apparently there's a new scam involving recording your voice saying yes. And that if you answer the phone and then the recording on the other end says, "Can you hear me?" and you say yes, that in some cases they're using the recording of your voice saying yes to confirm a credit card purchase of some kind. And so some of those are decidedly low tech like that, as opposed to the James Bond variety that we might be worried about here.
That's right. Most of the effective hacks that we hear about are all the low tech at the beginning, and then they use more sophisticated techniques once they're in. I mean, that was the case with the DNC hack of the Podesta emails. That was a Gmail phishing campaign. And even when we look at this WikiLeaks documents dump of the CIA material, we see that the CIA was not able to intercept the encrypted communications of apps such as Signal or WhatsApp. But what they were able to do is to get into your device using the low-tech methods and intercept those communications before they ever became encrypted. And so the real lesson here is while we like to talk about the sophisticated stuff, if we want to protect ourselves, we have to start with the basics. Password protection is huge. Using good passwords, things like that are security questions. That's where you and I are going to protect ourselves from the most common threats.
I'm talking to Shawn Tuma, who's an attorney and cybersecurity expert. Let's talk about the creepier aspects of this, because to the extent that WikiLeaks has released real data, and you never quite know whether how much of it to believe, but if they're right that there are software programs that can attack so-called smart TVs, I've got a couple of those, and some of those smart TVs include microphones in them because Samsung wanted people to be able to say, turn on, forensic files, or I want to watch the news tonight on CNN. And they put the microphones in there for that. But allegedly, there are software hacks that can now turn those microphones on and then allow somebody else to hear what's going on inside your home. And that's the one where I wonder whether people who are just, I guess, up to no good, or people who might be trying to rip you off might want to start accessing those things. And how do we protect ourselves against that? Because I would think in most cases, you couldn't even get the average consumer to point to where that microphone is on the Samsung TV, let alone know how to turn it off.
Lars, you're exactly right. Look, if something has a computer chip in it and it is accessible over the internet, someone will find a way to hack into it and listen in or use it maliciously or have it be a pivot point to get somewhere else or steal information off of it or what have you. Anything connected to the internet is vulnerable. And in the case of these smart TVs, from what I understand, the specific hack they were referring to, they needed to have physical access to it with a USB device to plug it in. But that doesn't mean it's the only way, right? So, yeah, the lesson is whenever you have information connected and devices connected to the Internet, there's always that kind of risk. That's why you see the people with their webcams with the tape over it. You see people not having computers in certain areas. I mean, if you're operating in a world or in an environment, or your business has really highly valuable trade secret information, things like that, don't put that stuff on the Internet. Because if you do, or have it connected, someone's going to find a way to get in. And it's not just the CIA that's capable of this. Criminal gangs are capable of it. Other states, such as China, Iran, Russia, have these capabilities. And, with some of these applications, teenagers in their parents' basement have the ability to get into this kind of stuff.
Well, and you wonder, it's so, I guess in some ways it's sad because I love the fact that all this technology is there. I mean, you know that in my job, I like to go out and surf for information, and it allows me a much better connection. I still remember doing talk when I was working out of paper newspapers and on a yellow legal pad and going down and looking at wire service reports. And now, you can look up almost any piece of data on literally a moment's notice by just tapping a few keys. But it also opens us up to many more intrusions into our life by people. And it's kind of sad because then you want to have the tools, but then have to be afraid of them as well. And it's too bad that that's the case. I mean, I've got a workshop full of tools like skill saws, but I don't have to worry that the skill saw is going to wake up in the middle of the night and try and cut me in half.
Well, you hope.
I hope until they put a chip in it.
Yeah, but the real lesson here is this technology, it's as much of a benefit as it is a burden. And it's all a matter, I mean, we all have to understand we can't go through life anymore with our brains on cruise control when it comes to cyber risk. We have to be cognizant of the risk, and we have to look at all of this as a big continuum of what's the value of what we're doing and what's the risk that it poses. Because at one end, you have things that are harmless to be exposed. So it's no problem to put that on certain services that might allow people to freely get that. I love the ability to get data from all around the world, like you said. But at the other end of that continuum, we have to understand that if we get into more of a sensitive nature, such as banking accounts, healthcare accounts that are online, things like that, we need to take stronger safeguards to protect that. Use multi-factor authentication. Use a complex password. Don't share it on other services. Things like that. And it's really just a matter of understanding what we have, how sensitive it is, and what the various ways are that people may use to get that.
Makes sense. Mr. Tuma, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Shawn Tuma is an attorney and a cyber expert. Never before in our history have we faced so many global threats. We were just talking about one with Shawn Tuma, and the list goes on. Our nation ponders, how are we going to meet all these threats? Well, each one of us has to act to secure the first steps toward survival and self-reliance today. As I mentioned time and again, it's the duty of every American to be prepared for a crisis. Now, my family and I are prepared. Are you? If not, My Patriot Supply has a limited time offer to get you started. A 72-hour emergency food supply for just $10. Food that lasts up to 25 years. Order it now at 888-579-7456. Online, preparewithlars.com. For $10, why not address this problem today? Limit 4 per caller. 888-579-7456.